Okay, y'all. It's your boy Malcolm Locks everywhere, and we are back with another episode of the Principal Protocol, where we talk about whatever Malcolm feels like he wants to talk about on this podcast. And I have a great friend of mine back to have a conversation. He's done some amazing things since we had him on last. I have my OG Mr. and the new executive of Newcastle County here in Delaware, my guy, Mr. Marcus Henry. How are you, brother?
I'm doing fine, my brother. Thank you for having me on. This partly started with you being on this show many months ago, so
Mm-hmm.
I got to thank you as well. Thank you.
Absolutely,
Thank you for your
absolutely, man.
support and give
I
me a venue.
absolutely I do the best I can with what I got.
Very well, sir.
So I know. Well, we just gonna get right into it. I know we had started talking about just mental health checks, right? Just
Yeah.
checking up on, and I think we need to do much more as that as black men, just checking up on one another. But how is Marcus Henry? He ran a campaign longer than usual. How is Marcus Henry? What is his temperature check right now? How are you?
Well, it's been like 2.5 weeks, give or take, since the election.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing very well, and I just got to say it, from the jump. I'm just so appreciative. Let me start with my family, my wife, and my kids who've been on this journey with me for 2.5 years.
I could be taxing on them.
Yes, it is. It's both personally, financially, all of it. And my wife's support, my daughter's support, my son's support, along with the wonderful campaign team that I had. It's very, very gratifying. So I feel great right now. And I
Mm.
feel so appreciative to the 60,000, give or take, folks that voted for me.
Ooh,
Um,
60,000.
yeah. And
What percentage was that? 60,000.
it was a low turnout, but as a percentage of the overall vote, we did very, very well county-wide. It was almost 61% to 39% against my opponent, which is really historical numbers.
Mhm.
And we did well across the board in all jurisdictions, in Wilmington, in Newark,
Yes, you did.
and MOT area, Delaware City. We maintained this 60% margin all the way through. So it was very gratifying. And I think a mandate for me, once I get in office, and just to be technical, I'm not in office yet.
Hmm.
There's still a general election,
Hmm.
although I have no opponent on the ballot. I don't have a Republican, I don't have an independent, but there could still be a writing candidate potentially. But I'm about
The
99%.
one person who did, he bowed out, right?
Yes, he withdrew many months ago, the Republican candidate for this office. So I'm the only person on the ballot running for county executive. So I feel good about my chances.
Yeah, because here in Delaware, it's interesting because it's a very blue state. So primaries is pretty much everything when you're here in Delaware. You win your primary for the most part, you've
For the most part.
won.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the most part, you won.
Mhm.
Not in every single situation,
Mhm.
but for the most part, you won. But you were talking about how it's just been taxing on family, and I know you've been hitting the streets, you've been knocking on
Mhm.
doors,
Mhm.
doing all the things. So it's good to know that the family is kind of starting to get back intact, getting back. And I know school started in between all of
That's always
that.
fun for everybody. I know. Yeah.
Yeah, school started in between all of that. So it's just good to see you in good spirits, and to have you back here on the principal protocol. But to your point, man, historic numbers. Although, and I'll ask you about the matter of fact, I'll ask you about it a little later.
Okay.
You had historic numbers across the board. But here in Delaware, I believe I had read a stat where it said, out of it was 22 point, the stat was 22.41.
Mhm.
And so that particular stat meant that 22.41% of registered voters voted in throughout the entirety of
Mhm.
Delaware, which that 22%, I think it was 122,000 some odd, but
Mhm.
of the registered voters, it
Mhm.
was 550,000 registered voters. And there's almost 1 million people, or if it hasn't already hit 1 million people, it's about 1 million people
Mhm.
here in Delaware. How does that make Marcus Henry feel? what type of work needs to be done, because you might have had historic numbers, which is good, but overall we had a very, very, very low voter turnout. What does Marcus Henry say about that? What do we do about that, and how can we really like change those numbers around?
Yeah, and I think it's always a bit tough in a primary anyway. That's just historically it's been tough.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that factored in was, in a good way, is early voting and absentee voting for folks. It gave folks more accessibility. And I think in the future, it's just making it easier and more accessible for people to vote in elections. I think that's what's important. We saw a pretty significant turnout in that early voting period, like 2 weeks before the general primary election, and that we saw the big difference there as we got to the general. I just think increasing opportunities for people to vote is what's important here in Delaware. There's no reason why we shouldn't make it more accessible for people to vote.
What do you think? What do you think that hindrance is when it comes to everybody so fixated on, Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump? Everybody's so fixated on that. Why do you think that there's such a fixation around, the presidential election? And people really don't understand how important these state and local elections are. Let's start there. Why is it so important for these state and local elections, and why should people come out for these state and local elections?
Because state and local government affects your life more on a day in, day out basis than the federal government does. And I think the media attention on the presidential election and national elections, I understand that, but locally affects you more. I mean, we affect your property taxes, your sewer, your public safety, your business opportunities. All these things directly correlate with county government, also with state government. But I don't think we've educated folks enough in terms of why it's important and why it's important to come out on a primary election and a general to vote in these state and local elections. And we need to do a better job of that, I think.
I 100% completely agree. And I'm such a huge advocate around, hey, you need to come out for your state, especially here in Delaware. Like, people don't understand that some of your majority of your local officials are literally one phone call away. They're one phone call away. They're one email away, or they're one degree of separation, maybe two at the most, where you could get in contact with these people and actually have a conversation with them. And like I said, I do my best to let people know, like, hey, you want to know how to get a pothole fixed on your street? Yeah, the president's not going to do that for you. You need to, really understand your state and local government and the climate around that. What do you think, from Marcus Henry's perspective, what do you think some of the things that we do need to be doing in terms of like awareness to get more people to come and vote from a primary perspective?
I think it's civic education.
Does it not? Do you think it resonates? Does it not resonate enough?
Well, people don't realize how important it is, like we just talked about, right? And all these things of how we affect your life. And I think we in government need to do a better job of marketing ourselves as well with respect to the services we provide. I mean, there's a lot of services the county provides. We partner with nonprofits on various initiatives, youth programs and services, for example, health, wellness, all these things you wouldn't think about from local government that we play an active role in. Well, folks aren't going to know this, so we don't market ourselves enough, right? And I think it's doing a better job of marketing, of outreach, in our partnerships with the nonprofit and private sector, and talking about these services available to people. And that's one of the things I'm going to lean into in my administration is making sure it's out there of the county services available to you, and also how we interact with state government and municipal government, like City of Wilmington, on these services, and who to call, for example, who to call. I have this issue. Who do I call? That's always an issue. And I think we can all do a better job in that coordination of services for our constituents.
100% agree. And, as I always see, in Wilmington, I'm like, man, certain council folks are having a great program, or, the previous executive, Matt Meyer, he had all types of cool stuff going on. And I'm like, and even on the negative side, like, people need to know the full spectrum of what's going on here in Delaware so that we all can have a part to play in it. And I'm just like, man, I didn't even know that this existed. I didn't even know that this person was doing this. I had no idea that this event was happening, or we had these type of resources that we could utilize to forward to make progress on something too. So to your point, that awareness is huge. And I think that, you know, everybody as a whole absolutely needs to bring more awareness to what it is that they got going on. So I 100% agree with you on that. What do you think was one of the most challenging parts of your campaign? You ran for a long time. So what was like something that was you think that was really challenging as you were running for Newcastle County Executive?
It was reaching the voters. It's 580,000 some people that live in Newcastle County.
Wow.
And it's difficult in Delaware and Newcastle County to reach all these folks. So I can't knock on a couple 100,000 doors. I can't call every single person. We certainly tried. We knocked on, thousands and thousands of doors. We made calls to over 60, 70,000 people. It's also tough in the local media market here, as you're aware, in Newcastle County and Delaware, to get your message out. We don't have a defined TV station, but we were able to do some outreach through digital media, through social media. So I think looking at non-traditional methods of outreach to voters was critical, and also targeting folks by where they live, by zip code and area, and understanding the issues and concerns specific to them in those areas. It was very scientific. And let me tell you, I had a tremendous campaign team of young people, older folks, good diversity that were up to date on data analytics, on technology, but also traditional campaigning and how it works. I think I had the best team maybe we've ever seen on a local election in Delaware. I've heard that from a number of campaigns that we ran the best campaign. And I'm so proud and honored to have had that support from my team.
Man, that's good. Being able, you need to have the what they say, the energy of the youth and the wisdom of the OGs to really.
I especially needed that.
Yeah, you need the energy of the youth and the wisdom of the OGs, man. I love that. So now, obviously we have a general election coming in November. How does it feel? Like, right, there's a of course you can have a write-in candidate, whatever. But for the most part, how does it feel? I mean, you will be the first African-American county executive.
I like that. I like that. Yeah, I do.
How's it feel? How does that feel?
It feels, I have to have a lot of humility in thinking about it. And I have to recognize the elected officials before me that I couldn't be in this position. The mayors we've had, Mayor Jim Baker, Jim Sills, Dennis Williams. I got to bring up my mother. She was the first African-American female state senator.
Very powerful entity in the state of Delaware.
Margaret Rose Henry.
Yes,
and just all these things. But nobody, not even an African-American, had attempted to run for this office. And I understand why now. It's hard and it's expensive. And so I feel fortunate. I feel humble. And it just obviously, as you understand, makes it doubly, triply important that I do a good job, that I set a good example for all people. But let me say this too. I was so gratified with the diverse support that I got. I got support from people living in Delaware City, up in Shannon and Greenville, white, black, what have you, by area, because I think our campaign message resonated with all folks. And I think that's important in the future for folks to realize. Other campaigns don't pander, have a universal message for folks that they can believe in and get behind.
I had the pleasure to see Marcus Henry in I don't want to say rare form because this is you all the time, but when we had the debate at the CSC station, and I was like, I
was too, for other reasons.
So to give the folks context on the pod and for all our listeners, right, man, like not only is Marcus good, in certain situations where it's like, some things can be scripted, right? When you are in a position where you're like actually having to debate, right, there's certain ways that you have to go about it, and you have to be very knowledgeable when it comes with the facts, when it comes to having certain debates. And listen, guys, when I seen Marcus on a debate stage, I was like, oh shoot. Because man, you did it. So first off, you did a great job. And then number two, it was like, dang, like you really had the facts. You had the facts historically, and not only did you have the facts historically, you understood how it affected how what your opponent didn't do and what you needed to do, and you were fighting her with the facts, which I thought was brilliant when you had that particular debate, man. So yeah, I had to give you your kudos for that real quick.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And for me, that's where my experience mattered. The fact that I have been doing this in state and local government management for over 20 years, running departments, being involved on so many programs, initiatives over the year. It shows through when you've done through this, and also the private sector experience. And I research this stuff. I go deep into regulatory language to figure these things out and what we have to do in the future. It's not just campaign talk. And I think that's what's come through is, okay, he gets this, he understands this because I've worked it for 20 years. And I think that was a big difference in me winning this election as well.
Yeah, I think the experience really, and I think that's what it was with a lot of races here in Delaware. Experience really shined through this particular round, right? So moving forward, what does this win mean for you? Like, what does this mean for you on a personal level? What does it mean for you on a professional level? Like the first African American New Castle County executive. What does this mean for you on a personal level and a professional level?
It's so important for me, my career path, and personally. I've made a lot of sacrifices to get to this point, and I'm gratified that I did. But now the work begins, right? The work begins. And there's a lot of work in front of us in county government. We're doing a lot of great things in local government in New Castle County, but there's going to be some challenges down the road that I think I'm well prepared and my cabinet will be well prepared to deal with. We need to make sure that our government services and service delivery, we do the best possible for the public. And that's number one. It's the services, and a big part of that service is making sure we keep people safe, right? Safe. That's not just policing, that's paramedics, 911 operators, fire service, volunteer fire service, making sure these services have the funding and the capacity to grow to handle increasing demand. So I'm looking at this thing broadly in terms of the government structure, but also in that service delivery, what we do to make sure we're always up to date and we're on point with how to do these things.
Yeah, I think it's going to be important because, like you said, it's 500 something thousand people in New Castle County. New Castle County is the biggest county here in the state of Delaware. So, challenging things lies ahead. What do you feel like is going to be, or maybe it hasn't even happened yet? Like, what do you feel like some of the things that you, as soon as you get in office, like what are some of the things that's like, I gotta make a change to this immediately?
Not so much change, but I got to put some real resource allocation and structural changes to human resources. One of the challenges we have in county government is taking entirely too long for a number of reasons to hire people. So our human resources, both from a hiring perspective, but also in our benefits package and how we hire, needs to change and get a little more efficient. When you don't hire quickly enough, you lose good candidates for these positions. We have high vacancies, I know, in policing, for example, but also in other areas where we need to do better in hiring to fill these vacancies. And then structurally, I think we just need to look at our funding opportunities in New Castle County, making sure they're in line to meet the growth that's happening here in New Castle County. So in all of that, like right now, other than the election coming up in November, it's going through a transition period where I'll have a transition team that'll help me make policy directives in terms of the direction I want county government to go. But also in that process, have a vetting process to hire people, new people potentially at various positions in county government, overseeing departments and in other areas. And also potentially retaining some folks, I should say, as part of the administration. There's some good people in this current administration that I would love to retain, but there's some new people I want to bring in, obviously.
Absolutely. As you should. As you should. Now, everybody's still talking about housing. What's Marcus Henry's plan for housing in New Castle County?
We have to take a broad look from our land use regulatory environment and see how we can incentivize specifically for housing opportunities. And when I talk about housing affordability, which is obviously a huge issue here in the state and in the county, actually regionally, it's how do you incentivize that? And there's ways to do that. And I mention this all the time, it's not just new construction.
Mm-hmm.
It's generating new units of housing, be it through new construction, through rehab, through infill redevelopment in urban centers, but also potentially looking at commercial property repositioning, residential use. I think all these on the table, but I think also making sure we're being smart and prudent in our land use policy procedures to make sure that growth happens in areas of need.
Do you think you get a lot of push? Do you think you're going to get a lot of pushback for some of these? Because some of this stuff is like, I don't feel like it's innovative, right? Do you think you'll get pushback for wanting to execute on some of these plans, or?
Of course I will. That's just the nature of what we do, and that's why you run for office, is to make these systemic changes and create these initiatives. Some people aren't going to like that. Some people just argue about it for a lot of reasons, but it doesn't mean it's not the right thing to do. We have a housing shortage. We need to cure that. And there's various ways to do that from the county perspective, but also in partnership with other jurisdictions, the state and the private sector, to incentivize this market for housing production. We have a housing production issue that has to be cured. And that's housing at various price points to create that availability here in the Newcastle County market. It's going to take time, but we have to cure that because we're not meeting the growth. If you don't meet the growth, what's going to happen? They're going to move out of Delaware or look at other places. And I want people to stay here in Newcastle County and grow with good housing and jobs.
Yeah, I think that as I just kind of peruse through the landscape of just Newcastle County as a whole, and I think about how the land is being used, and I think what you talked about repurposing commercial things from a housing perspective, I think that's going to be like really, really good moving forward, because it's just, as I just driving through Wilmington and just driving through Newcastle County, I see so many unhoused people, and just a lot of people who just like are just, and as I scroll through Facebook every single day, I'm like, man, it's really tough out here for a lot of people. And I know you're talking about incentivizing a lot of things. Do you want to really be in a position? I know there kind of has to be a balance, and I don't know enough, so that's why I'm asking.
Sure.
Do you want to kind of see like more home ownership? Is it more renting? Like, what do you want to see more of, or do you need a balance of both?
I think there's a good balance in there. We have a shortage, obviously, in certain types of home ownership units, but we do have a shortage in multifamily, which is rental. And I think it's a balance of having a good strong rental market, but also home ownership opportunities. We have deficiencies in both areas. And so I think depending on how it goes with respect to how we incentivize, we can cure both things, but both are necessary to grow the supply we currently have.
Got you. Yeah, like I said, I just see it here in Delaware, and I know obviously, like you said, it's a regional issue. It's not just Delaware; it's New Jersey, it's PA, it's Maryland. There's a lot of issues with housing, and I know you're definitely, from your perspective, and I know you personally, I know you're going to definitely tackle this head on. Education. I know education is a big thing. We're going to have a major shift with the governors. In the next couple of months, are going to be a major shift. Education in Newcastle County. What are your goals now that you're here, county executive? What are some of the things that you want to really progress forward, or what are some of the things you might want to take away? What's your thoughts?
Well, it's an issue that is obviously so critically important here in Newcastle County and the state in terms of the quality of our public education. To be honest and fair, the county doesn't have any real jurisdiction over education. But I think it's so critically important that the county executive stay involved in working with other elected officials and the governor and others on how can we improve the quality of education in our public schools. For us, though, there are things that we are doing right now, the county government is, that I'll continue to. For example, after-school programs for kids, literacy programs to supplement what they're doing in the schools, partnering directly with the school districts on programs and services to help these kids, using our libraries, for example. We have a history of doing that. I want to do even more of that, of providing supplemental education, augmenting what they're doing in the school districts. But I think we broadly, unfortunately, have a problem here in Delaware that has never really truly been addressed in terms of an equity issue of education. I'll work with the next governor on that and others, because we've got to cure this issue. It's a shame. I've heard this for half my life about education here. And to be fair, we got great public schools. Don't get me wrong. We really do. It's just that parents, and as a parent of two teenagers, well, one's in college now, I know that experience of struggling to figure out how to provide your kids the best educational opportunities. And everybody deserves that. Everybody should have an opportunity to have the best quality education for their kids here in Delaware and Newcastle County. So I want to be part of that solution, be at the table and helping with these discussions.
I love to hear that, because education is such a huge thing here in Delaware. Man, it's such a huge thing here in Delaware. It goes, so many people go back and forth about it in so many different ways. One thing that I am very, very, very bullish on is obviously small businesses, right?
Yep.
And there's a lot of good programs here from Newcastle County, but I'm sure Marcus Henry is probably going to be innovative in a few areas, especially because you're an entrepreneur yourself.
Yep.
What do you see some of the things that could potentially be changed for the better in Newcastle County from a small business and economic development standpoint?
Well, yeah, this is something near and dear to my heart, being a business owner, as well as a government official. I think we need to share information better. I think we need to create a consortium of the programs and services available to small businesses right now and work together better. The county, the state government, SBA, the programs with the banks. I think we need to share, because every business has its own specific challenges: access to capital, writing up your business plan, just how to read your balance sheet. I think all these things are available in terms of resources, but gathering these resources, a consortium, with some coherency about what's available to you. Now, from the county perspective, if businesses need access, permitting, or approvals from county government through our land use or economic development office, I want to give particular technical assistance to small businesses. Mm-hmm. I'm going to create a position or detailed position of an ombudsman that'll assist small businesses navigate through our regulatory process to assist them. Same goes actually for medium and larger businesses too. I think we need to do a better job of technical assistance to help them get through our system a little bit quicker and a little more efficiently. So I think there's so much opportunity in this area in particular. I'd much rather see 50 to 100 new small business startup versus waiting for the next large business to come here in Delaware, Newcastle County. Vitally important, but small business is the key to our future, our economic future.
100% agree on that. Especially, we're a small business over here, so, and
doing good. Keep it up.
We're doing the best we can with what we got over here. Yeah. Shout out to my guys, Nudie Felton and Steven Sy. Now, with that being said, I want to I watched recently a special. I don't know if you saw it, but I saw a special with Oprah and Sam Altman and Bill Gates, and they were talking about the future of artificial intelligence, and it's such a buzzword right now. What is Marcus Henry's thoughts around this big buzzword, artificial intelligence? When you hear it, what do you think? What do you feel when you hear these words?
I think, and I'm not an expert in this area, but just from what I've read and what I've seen, the potential is astounding. But I'm so concerned right now that who controls this and how is it regulated? And I still don't think they've really figured out the regulation of AI, which is important. A big issue that we have in local government in Newcastle County also, it's not AI, but it kind of jives with it, is cybersecurity. Right? Cybersecurity. Yes. And that is a huge issue for us that we're always fighting in terms of outside forces, getting into our system, but also how we protect that. And a lot of local governments and government in general has been vulnerable to cyber attacks over the last several years. And I need to make sure, it's tantamount that I make sure that the county systems, computer systems, are secure, right? So I love to see a pilot of AI as it works for local government. I can see a lot of aspects of it, but I think we're not quite there from my perspective in terms of the full utility potential you get out of AI. But it will change the world eventually. I just want to make sure we have our ducks in a row now and in the near future.
Yeah, and to that particular point,
Mhm.
from a cybersecurity perspective, like people's data is critical.
I think I
Okay,
lost you.
yeah, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened there, but
That was weird. Okay, no problem.
yeah, no worries. We still locked and loaded. Yeah, so
Mm.
you know, cybersecurity from cybersecurity is just so critical. Like I was saying, you don't want people's data leaking out at all, especially from a county perspective, from a personal perspective. You just don't want people's data leaking out at all, and I know that could cause major issues moving forward. And I would love to see, Delaware as a whole, especially because we housed the president recently. So, our data might even be a little bit more critical than
Mhm.
the typical data um that you see across the nation. And I'm glad that you're going to address some of these things from a cybersecurity perspective, because it's important. And I don't think a lot of people are actually thinking about cybersecurity, which, I can't do everything, but you know I think that when we have leaders that can understand certain things and how to put it all together, from
Right.
a housing perspective, from an education perspective, from a technology perspective, from dealing with the people perspective, and there's so many other things. I'm not a person who is in office, so I don't know all the things, but I feel like Marcus Henry is in a position to put all of these things together and put us in a position to really progress what it is that we're going to do in Newcastle County. So I wanted to ask you that question. um, from a policy perspective, when it comes to artificial intelligence,
Mhm.
what do you like? I know you're talking about regulations. Outside of the cybersecurity issue, what are some of the other things that artificial intelligence potentially gives you the heebie-jeebies about, outside of just a cybersecurity perspective?
Um, it doesn't give me the heebie-jeebies per se. It's just that I mean, I think it's going to change the world. I really
Mm,
do. I think it's going to change how we do things, obviously in government, but also in our everyday lives. You kind of see it already, right?
mhm,
And for me, it's especially Newcastle County government. We're mostly a public facing entity, meaning that we deal directly with with people. Okay. And I think AI could add utility to helping constituents in what we do, but it's always important that we give that opportunity for people to talk to a human being, to engage human being to solve their issues or concerns. But and it's just I also want to make sure that with AI, we see some case studies or some pilot, which I'm sure will be coming in the near future, of how it can directly impact the service delivery of local government, and also make sure it's scaled when it's scaled, that it's not cost prohibitive to
mm,
implement within government services. So do some cost benefit analysis, as you do with anything else with AI. But I think all of this, Malcolm, is coming.
mhm,
We have to be ahead of the curve.
mhm,
I go back to what I said, just make sure that the government and others regulate this thing appropriately,
mhm.
so we don't open up Pandora's box potentially with some of the things that can happen with this.
Mm. Man,
I think I've seen the Terminator too many times. Let me
yeah,
say.
everybody keeps saying we're about to turn into Skynet.
I've seen Terminator too many times. It's ingrained in my head, right?
Oh man, I think
Get
it's,
over that,
oh
man.
man, so crazy, man. It was interesting yesterday. We had some youth here
Yeah, excellent.
from Camden, New Jersey, and one of my guys, shout out to my guy Ricardo, Councilman Ricardo Dale. He has a program called Fam Academy that has a 100% rate of these kids going into college, and they're all black boys, and I love it.
Fantastic.
And we really had some in-depth conversations around the philosophy and the morality around, artificial intelligence. Whereas, like, it's people out here trying to give machines a soul. And I'm like, we have souls, right? We have souls. To your point, we need to be the humans that are interacting with the humans. I feel
Yeah.
like this technology can help us to be more efficient. But in terms of like giving us the soul, I'm like, man, that's outside of my pay grade, man. So it's just cool to have these conversations. It's cool to see this type of technology because I tell these kids all the time, like when I was coming up, when I was your age, I'm like, a iPhone that I could see somebody's face in.
Yeah.
Who would have
Your
thought?
mind does it sometimes. Technology
Yeah, who?
rapidly evolves.
Yeah, it's things is just happening so rapidly. So real quick before we roll out from a national perspective, obviously everybody is so fixated and there's so many polar opposite
Yep.
positions with what's going on in this election in November. What's Marcus Henry feel? What are your thoughts? Yeah, how do you feel?
Well, I mean, I'm a Democrat. I'm a proud Democrat, and all that means. I don't see this as a hard choice at all, even for my Republican friends. You have Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I think they are eminently qualified to lead this country. The other person is not, and has demonstrated that before. And I believe a clear and present danger. I'm not speaking politically. I'm just in terms of running the affairs of this country. I do not trust, and I won't even name him that person. So the choice is clear to me. And you've seen hundreds and hundreds of former Republican officials from all sectors come out in support of Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, and Tim Walz. And I 100% support them in this effort. 100%.
There you have it, y'all. Mr. Marcus Henry, the first African American Newcastle County executive, and you will be seeing Mr. Marcus Henry more often on the Principal Protocol because we love his perspective on things, and we want to make sure that we stay updated on the things that's happening in Newcastle County. We want to make sure that we stay updated on the things that's going well, the things that's going not so well, where we could really build that up. So yeah, Marcus, I appreciate you as always.
I appreciate you.
Always good vibes every single time I see Mr. Marcus Henry, and I look forward to seeing you do well in this position, brother.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And once again, y'all, this is the Principal Protocol. It's your boy Malcolm X everywhere, and we are out.